Hello and welcome back to Driving Britain. Today's video we're going to be looking at the things that have apparently become obsolete since the year 2000. Now the year 2000 isn't that long ago, and I think that most things that were about in the 2000s are still about now. I think that they probably work a lot quicker and certainly a lot more memory on computers and things like that. But I'm not sure that, well, I really can't think of anything offhand that's now actually obsolete. Other than perhaps MP3 players. Yeah, that's incorporated in your phone. And really, you could argue that that's not even obsolete. It's just changed device. You wouldn't need a standalone device for it. So, yeah, that's obsolete. But the idea of an MP3 player, I think we still have that. Either way, let's jump straight into the video. Oh, it's by Yeti for History. Links in description, like always. Don't forget to subscribe. Right, let's get into the video and see which things we think really have become obsolete since the year 2000.
In the last 22 years, we have made some huge strides in the way of technology. Before 2000, things like smartphones, iPods, text messaging, social media, GPS, streaming, and driverless cars didn't really exist. There is no doubt that it has been amazing and wonderful, but think about what we've lost. In today's video, we will have a look back on some of the things that have become almost entirely obsolete. At one time, high schools and colleges had something called computer labs. These were specific rooms where all the computers were kept. Back before everyone toted around their own personal computer, this is where you would go in order to have access to one.
Hang on a minute, these still exist? Well, in UK schools and colleges and universities they do anyway. In schools, you do have a computer room where you'd go to learn about computing, but you wouldn't get access to that just to use the computer anyway. You wouldn't be able to just go in and do your work. But what you can do is go to the library, either the school library or public library, and there's computers there, which you can use and connect to the internet and pay for prints and stuff like that if you need them. But they still exist. Most people do have computers, personal computers and laptops and stuff like that, but not everybody has, and I don't think that the school system assumes that everybody has. But at the same time, you probably only got a handful of accessible computers at a school or a university library or something like that. You're not going to have, well, a university is a bit bigger, but a college perhaps, you're not going to have quite as many accessible computers. But you do still have them. I don't think that they're obsolete. They're not in that form. I think that's an American system. But our version of that, we've still got that.
When you left the room, you wouldn't have access to a computer again until you returned to that room.
Yeah, the computer room in the UK is pretty much incorporated into the library usually.
Back in the days of landlines, you could call someone and hear a busy signal. At the time, it was super annoying, but in the age of cell phones, we'd give anything to hear it again.
Well, this is a US video, and it's fairly new, so I'm guessing that means that in the US, on your mobile or on a landline, when you call someone, you no longer get the busy signal. In the UK, we still get that. If you call somebody on your mobile, you still get 3 or 4 bleeps, and then it'll automatically cut off for you. If you call them from a landline, again, you get the bleep still. It doesn't go, it hasn't stopped, we still get it.
If you heard this on the phone, it gave you solid information. The person you were trying to reach was home, but was on another call. Nowadays, going straight to voicemail can mean anything. Remember when you had to stay home from school because you were sick and then you watched TV all day? It never failed that you would watch The Price is Right with Bob Barker, and it's the reason why so many people have fond memories of the show. It was either that, some terrible soap opera, or the local news. Back then, your choices were very limited.
As far as that goes, the UK, we had even less channels. The advent of Sky, that definitely made Sky Enough School a lot better. I'm not sure that's a good way forward, but it was TV when we were younger and having time off school and stuff then, it was a lot less fun than what it is now. And you go back to the time he's talking about, then you'd probably rather be at school than watch them.
1997, DVDs arrived in the US, and it didn't take long for the new format to make VCRs feel like cave drawings. In 2005, the Washington Post gave the obsolete product a tongue-in-cheek obituary. It passed away peacefully after a long illness caused by chronic technological insignificance and a lack of director's commentary tracks.
Yeah, I agree that the video recorder is a lot less useful or used anywhere now. But at the same time, I think a lot of households in the UK especially still have video recorders, because not only have we got some videos still, probably not many, but if anybody made home recordings, the way that you would most likely play them is through a video recorder like that, or you'd have them transferred onto a videotape. You can get them burnt onto DVDs and put onto storage devices and stuff like that nowadays, but most people probably wouldn't have got round to that. Also, I think that there might be a bit of a resurgence going back towards the old video recorder for watching films, just the same as there's been a bit of a turnaround with vinyl records. And it's not that the quality, well, vinyl maybe the quality might be different and stuff, but with video the quality is obviously not anywhere near as good. But there's something about the romance of it, I think, and that might be why it's making a little bit of a comeback. But personally, I'm quite glad to see them shut away in the drawer for when you have to use it, because it's the only device that will play whatever it is that you're trying to play.
Walking by a film processing counter at a pharmacy can be a little strange today. It's sort of like driving by an abandoned mall. You can't help but look and remember some past times that were better. Remember the feeling you would get when you got your film developed in 1 hour? We never really thought that something like that would become obsolete.
Yeah, I think that the photo booth like that, or 1 hour prints, they're all gone, or pretty much gone. But what I have seen is in our supermarkets, you've got the machines where you can plug your SD card in there and get actual print photos out. They seem quite popular. I always see at least one person standing there printing out their pictures to get like a hard copy of a photo. I see that quite often, and I think that that's one thing that we probably shouldn't have moved away from, because we all take millions of pictures, but we don't save them. They're just on our phone somewhere, or on a storage device, or we dump them on a computer to free up space on our phone. We don't put them in a way that we're ever going to actually look at them again. With a photo album, you only bring them out every, however many years, usually quite a lot of space in between the last time you looked at it and the next time. But they're still kind of there to be able to look through. Photos on a computer, on your phone, unless I've actually gone back to look for something, I don't really remember any time ever actually purposely going back to look through the pictures that I've taken. I'm not on about just, you're taking a selfie to post right there and then. I'm on about when you see something really nice, think, oh yeah, that's a great sunset, I'm going to take a picture of that. And you'll look at it at the time, and you might show people at the time or within the next few hours, but then that's it. It's just another bit of clutter on your phone or on your computer that never gets seen again. And eventually you see that they're old photos, you either dump them in another older file to collect all the old files of photos together, or you just delete it. Photo album, you just don't do that. So that's going to get passed on to the next generation. They're still going to be there. But our digital photos, they're not going to be passed on, are they? Not really. It's not likely. Say if we was all to croak now and then somebody inherit our computer or our phone where all our photos are they likely to put them in a way that then are going to be passed on to the next generation? No, of course they're not going to. So right now we can look at pictures of previous generations and previous eras since the advent of photography, and we can see exactly what that looks like. But all of this, 2000 onwards, all of our history, how's that going to be recorded in snippets of video on YouTube? I'm not sure that we've made a good move forward. I think that we need a bit of a balancing up between those two. We should make our own rules, mental rules to keep ourselves to. For every 10 photos we take with a camera on our phone, we should force ourselves to print out at least one of them just to save it, just so that we don't live in a decade, in a century that's just not recorded other than through YouTube and TikTok. Otherwise people in the future, they're going to think that we were just crazy people that like cat videos and used to fall in a lot of cactus plants and fall off cars and whatever else. Not to mention the Generation Z type videos that we've been putting out. They're going to be judging us all by them, aren't they? That's our legacy, because we stopped taking proper photographs that we printed out and put in an album. My God, what have we done?
At one time, everyone used dot matrix printers, but about the only places you'll still see these are at the occasional thrift store electronics sections and the occasional car rental office. These printers were a pain in their prime, and especially when they jammed, which was quite often. But if you do happen to...
And the noise. Constant noise from a dot matrix printer. That's enough to make you want to go back to a typewriter.
Hear one today, it will certainly give you a happy feeling. If there's no picture on your TV today, then it likely means your internet is out. If that happens, then you will just see a black screen. However, there was a time when generations of TV watchers would get the electromagnetic noise or static on the screen, which was frustrating.
Yeah, especially when you had, in the UK, originally there was 4 channels and then Channel 5 came out, but they all used to shut off quite early as well. Early by today's standards, at least. And then you would get some type of end tune or something like that to say that the station was closing. Then it would either switch over towards home shopping channels, which, that was a bit of a later move. But before that, then you'd just end up with that static, wouldn't you? Whereas nowadays we get in the UK, now we get reruns of comedies on Channel Dave, but even they go off about 4 or 5 in the morning.
Many younger generations hardly even own televisions, since streaming services like Netflix and Hulu can be viewed on their phones.
Can you imagine getting up and walking across the room to change the volume or the channel on your TV now? Can you imagine how kids would look at you if you asked them to go to the TV to change the volume on the TV or to put it on a different channel? They'll be phoning up for a lawyer and seeing if they can divorce the parents, have themselves adopted to the state because they was made to go and change a channel on the TV.
Slide projectors were once a huge part of our culture. Maybe you saw one at school, or perhaps your aunt made you sit and view all of her vacation photos, which you had to pretend to enjoy.
Yeah, things like that, though, they were expensive. I don't think that many houses in the UK had them. Some might have, but you're on about, the richer families. I don't think most kids would have come in contact with one of those in the house. Maybe at school, when the schools used to put on movies now and again as a treat, then they use an old projector originally, and then it changed to the current type of projector. I don't remember the eras when you'd have the slide projectors or anything, but I'm sure that that's probably what they would have used originally. And that's probably the only way that most kids in the UK would have come in contact with that, unless you're from a particularly wealthy family.
Younger generations will never get to experience the pull-down screen, heat from the projector, or the dust that would rise above it when you would see it in the light in the air. Fax machines were once an important tool to have in many offices and businesses. But when was the last time that you used one? If you still...
I haven't used a fax machine in a long time, but I know that the people still do use them. And when you do get, actual physical correspondence, through snail mail, you do see fax numbers on the top of letters quite often still. But it really, when do you try to apply for things like your passport or your driving licence in the UK, to upload a picture, even just a couple of years ago, then you would have to save it as a file, and then you might be able to upload the file. And even that's only within recent years. Now you can take a selfie and upload that selfie direct. But you're on about quite recent with a lot of that sort of stuff. And so then you transfer that into company terms. There's a lot of things where you could take if you need to send a copy of a letter to someone now, you would just take a photo of it and just email them a photo. But that's a really recent thing. It's only because cameras are so much better now. And I think that's more the last couple of years, last 5 years maybe. But I wouldn't say that they're obsolete from the year 2000, and I don't think that they're obsolete now, because I think that some groups still need a hard copy, especially if it involves a signature.
Still have a fax machine, then don't bother giving out your number, because nobody is going to fax you on one of these obsolete products. Kids today really have it easy. The world is full of instant gratifications, especially when you're talking about pictures. An image captured on a smartphone can be seen in just nanoseconds after taking it. In the past, instant had a different...
Yeah, and cameras are very good now. Quality of a camera on a mobile phone, it's better than the actual dedicated standalone cameras half the time.
Meaning, Polaroid cameras were instant, but that was in comparison to having film developed. It still took a few minutes for the image to slowly appear. Now, most people wouldn't have the patience to wait for a Polaroid picture.
Yeah, I don't think people would really wait too much now. But again, the Polaroid, that was an expensive camera. It wasn't that the camera itself was massively expensive. They were expensive, but cameras were overall, actual proper cameras. It's the film, that's what really cost the money with the Polaroid. And not only that, people knew that the picture would start to fade after about 5 years. So I think that they didn't really take off as much. Well, they did take off. They was really, really popular, but I mean, they didn't last as much because of that, I think. Let alone other advances, because the Polaroid to the mobile phone taking pictures, because the time of the Polaroid camera and mobile phones taking pictures, you're on about a pretty big gap. So they didn't fade out because of the mobile phone. They just faded out because they were too expensive and the pictures didn't last as long as a conventional one. But having said that, I'm sure that a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a new version of the Polaroid camera brought back out, wasn't there? Part of it was aimed at kids, but also there was an adult version released in the UK, and it was a pretty standard Polaroid. You got a film cartridge set with it, and it was pretty cheap in comparison. It wasn't as cheap as taking it on your mobile, obviously, but it wasn't anything like the cost of the original Polaroids. It made it so that it was a bit more realistic. But having said that, again, I don't remember seeing it since it really came out and was mainly advertised during a Christmas period and stuff like that. If you bought one of them, or if you still have one of them, I mean one of the new ones, how did they change? What was different between the original versions, other than cost?
Landlines are something that has just about disappeared. At one time they were in every home. That was back when phones were meant for talking and they didn't have internet connections, apps, or touchscreens. Taking photos with them or sending a text just wasn't an option.
Yeah, I think that landlines are probably still a bit more popular in the UK because of how mobiles are seen with companies. And by that I mean, if you're, say, a tradesman, a plumber, let's say, and you've only got a mobile number on the back of your van, people are a lot less likely to want to call that number than if you have an actual landline number and a mobile. And it's because with a mobile, once you're gone, you're gone. There's no way of tracking them down. But with a landline, there's a little bit more security to it. So people are a lot more inclined to trust companies that also display a landline number as well as a mobile. Most landlines transfer electronically through, or you can have them transferred through to your mobile anyway. So you never actually use it. You probably don't even need to plug a phone into it. And also, elderly. You can get those emergency buttons so that if you fall over, you can press your button and it connects you through to an emergency operator. They all run on landlines, and so I think there's other systems as well like that run on landlines. So I think for that reason, landlines are still quite popular in the UK, even though most people probably don't have an actual phone connected to it. And a lot of people that have internet through, say, BT, then a lot of the time I think you get the landline as part of it, or you at least used to, even though you'll be getting fibre optic type internet. And not all of the telephones in the UK are internet phones yet, because they are moving to that. So that at the moment in the UK, we have cables in the air that run between the houses and a post somewhere in the street, and that's our telephone line. Now they're trying to do away with those and have it so that you make your call basically through the internet, like a Skype call without a picture. That's what BT and other groups are moving towards for your landline calls. So soon the actual phone line itself won't really exist for most people unless you have a specific reason, because you've got a monitor system or something like that. So I think that they are still quite popular in the UK, but as soon as that happens, I think the remaining people that still have it are probably going to ditch it. And the whole thought of, I'm not going to trust that company because they've not got a landline, I think that we're moving far enough away from that now, because that was more like when mobiles first came out, I think. So I assume that's what it came from, because I can't think of a good reason otherwise. But we should be far enough away from that now for it not to still impact companies, aren't we?
Internet connections used to require a phone line which plugged into a computer. The computer would then attempt to call the internet.
Oh, there's that horrible icon.
And sometimes your connection would get interrupted if somebody in the house picked up another.
If you're trying to download a picture and you've got rubbish internet, or you want to dial up, and you see the picture slowly emerging, just a line at a time, and it'll get halfway through and then you'll drop the signal or you'll lose connection, and that's the lot gone. You either go with the half a picture that you managed to get and move on, or you try it again and probably run the same. It's like loading an old computer game and 5 goes to actually get the game to load.
Your phone. Compared to how things are today, it was a pain, but who could forget the excitement of almost being online? Long before cars and cell phones had global positioning systems, or GPS, it was possible that you could venture out into the world and not have a clue where you were. It was called being lost. At that point, you stopped into the nearest gas station to ask for directions or to find...
Yeah, like we did. No one ever stops to ask for directions. And a few times when you do, the person that you ask says, I don't know, I'm not from this area, I'm just visiting. Well, that's what's always happened to me anyway.
Find a map. If you were feeling adventurous, then you would keep wandering around until you figured out where you were going. It was sort of a weird thrill to be lost and then...
Yeah, that's the thing though. Could kids of today read a map and actually understand it? I mean, not just, point somewhere out. I'm not on about unroll a map, say point to Chicago, they look for the word Chicago and stick their finger on that blob. I don't mean like that. I mean actually navigate from one place to another using an actual traditional map. The map systems that we used to use in the UK for, say England to Scotland, then you'd use an atlas map, which is like what the woman's holding there. It's big pages showing the main artery roads and stuff like that, the motorways. Then when you got local into an area, then we'll have an A to Z map. A big full proper A to Z will list all of the places in the UK, and then you could kind of go to that page, pick out the name in the index, go to that page and get the actual local road names to find exactly where you needed. Or you could get like a miniature pamphlet type version for each area. But I don't think that many people now would be able to work their way from, say, London to Edinburgh and to an actual specific address or road, at least a house number in Edinburgh, using a map, an atlas map and an A to Z. I think that they would really, really struggle.
And figure it all out. Once the internet came along, we had directions that we could print out from MapQuest. It was a lot easier.
Oh yeah, but did anybody ever... We used to have that from the AA, you could print out the directions. But the trouble is, if you went wrong with any one of them directions, which often happen, especially in the UK, because we've got a lot of islands, roundabouts. So say if it says, drive down a road, take the third left, and then go over the roundabout, take the second right. Seems straightforward enough. But if there's another road on the left that the maps don't know, that the AA haven't accounted for in their maps, then the third that you take might be the wrong one. And when you get to the island, if there's another turning that leads off somewhere, do you count that as one of the turnings? So say if you've got a list of 30 instructions with your lefts, rights, islands, traffic lights, all the rest of it. If you make a mistake, or if they make a mistake or anything goes wrong, anywhere in that kind of sequence of your 20 or 30 instructions, then all of the other instructions are going to be wrong. So say if your first instruction is go down the road and take your second left, but it turns out there's actually 3 turnings on your road, and so you take the second one when they actually wanted you to take the third one. Everything from that point on is going to be off. They're going to tell you to drive straight and then go over the next island. You're going to be at a completely different island to where they think you are. So it just never worked. It was better than nothing, and it made the A to Z and the Atlas a little bit easier. But relying on it, oh no, that would be about... Even now, even with SatNav, when we make our driving videos, we have 2 SatNavs running because there's always at least one of them that's wrong about something and has to reroute or chooses a route that we know it just isn't right. It's not the best route. So we have 2 SatNavs permanently running, and we kind of pick the best options out of the 2 of them. And that's with up-to-date SatNavs and current technology. That seemed even more of a nightmare thinking back to it. It might have seemed like a good idea at the time, but it just never worked. I think you usually got halfway through, realised that the instructions weren't working, you was either in the wrong place or you couldn't work out which junction they were talking about, and you just reverted back to the old maps and atlases and stuff like that.
Easier, but still no GPS. For generations, music has been a huge part of our lives. Today, music can be stored on our phones or other digital sources. But there was a time when we had to physically carry around all of our music. It may have been in a cassette tape box or a CD binder. You were limited on what you could play based on what you brought with you.
Yeah, how many people still have CDs though that they put in their car? I think there's still probably quite a few. tapes. I don't know if anybody's even still got any tapes, let alone have a tape player or would use them. So I think tapes, they're pretty obsolete now. Plus, if you have still got some tapes from back when they were popular, I would think that they probably would have warped by now. But CDs, I don't know, I don't think that they're obsolete. I think that they're still used.
Sorting through all your music and then switching out a cassette tape or a CD in the car was every bit as dangerous as texting is today.
No, it's not. In the UK, we drive manual cars, stick shift. Mostly, 99% of the population, 98% of the population drive manual cars. So you regularly take your hand off the steering wheel to change gear. Just the same as you reach over to turn the volume up on your stereo. Not everybody's got controls on the steering wheel for your volume and stuff. So picking out a CD, obviously if you're going to sort through your CDs like on the picture, then that's all a bit different. But just picking up a CD and slotting it into the CD drive, I'm not sure that that's as dangerous as texting on your phone.
Blind dates were once a real thing. Usually a person would set you up with someone and you really had no idea what that other person looked like. Apps such as Tinder and Facebook have changed the game. Some might argue that it has also taken away the weird thrill.
Oh, no, I think blind dates probably still exist because they're usually set up by friends, aren't they? It's not like you're going to, you might answer an ad out of a newspaper or something, but I don't think very many people would have done that. If you go on a blind date, it's because somebody's set it up. So I'm not sure that any of the dating apps or websites have really made a difference to that. And apart from that, I'm sure that dating websites have been around on the internet since almost the beginning of the internet, at least since the 2000s anyway, along with Friends United and all of the other things that came out. So right, it might be easier because there's an app, but they were around. So I don't think that they're obsolete since the 2000s. But as for a blind date, I don't think that's obsolete at all. I think that still happens.
Kids today not only can't write in cursive, but some of them can't even read it. Cursive seems to be a lost art, and just about the only thing you'll use it for is...
Most people in the UK can read and write joined up writing. And if you couldn't, then I'm assuming that it's because there's something probably wrong with you. Yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, yeah, really, if you wasn't a person that was progressing enough to be reading and writing normally like that, then you'd probably be given a little bit more help and tuition because everybody would assume there's something actually wrong with you. But the way that he just said that, that's like as if in the US people just don't and can't write joined up writing. I'm not sure that's true. Surely that can't be true. If you're in the US and listening to this, can you and do you write in joined up writing? Or have you really moved that far past actually putting pen to paper? In schools as well, apparently, according to what he's trying to make out. I don't believe that. If you're in the US, then put into the comment section if you can in fact write using joined up writing and you can easily read joined up writing. Well, as easy as however messy the writing is, obviously. Yeah, my writing looks like a spider's run through an inkwell and then had a seizure. So I'm not saying that it's easy to read joined up writing, but that's because the quality of my writing rather than everybody else's. 99% of the time you would, if you're going to write something down, you would write using joined up writing. The only time when you would use your spaced letters is if you was filling in a document where you wouldn't be allowed to use joined up writing. But if someone was actually going to write something down on a piece of paper in the UK, you would just write in joined up writing. I can't believe that that's not a thing in the US. And I'm not sure that I believe that that's a thing in the US. So if you are in the US, then add to the comment section, because that seems a bit extreme. That you no longer really write in joined up writing, aren't taught to, don't really know how to, and can't do it.
Cursive seems to be a lost art, and just about the only thing you'll use it for is signing your name. With everyone using email and text, it just doesn't have any real-world applications anymore.
Well, firstly, I think that the idea that you shouldn't know how to write or learn how to write because you can do it electronically means it hasn't got any real-world applications anymore. I think that that's a really stupid thing to think or believe. You're not always going to have an electronic device around when you need to write something down. But the idea that the entire population of North America can barely read joined up writing and can't write in joined up writing, I just don't believe that. That can't be true, surely. But anybody that knows, and it's the comment section, because we've been surprised by quite a lot of stuff with some of these videos. Yeah, it might be just that you've been made to write in print at school for so many years, whereas in the UK, you would write in normal joined up writing at school. So we've never had a system where you wouldn't write in joined up writing unless you're filling in a document, like a legal document or something, where you have to space your letters specifically to fit your characters in the little boxes. But if in the US you're discouraged from writing in joined up writing, and that's been the way for a long time, then maybe it's a thing. But I don't know, I find that really hard to believe.
Prior to 2000, a cloud was a collection of condensed water vapor hovering in the sky. You know where rain comes from, but it certainly wasn't where you stored all your computer files. If you wanted to save something important, then you needed something like a floppy disk, which could hold up to 240 megabytes of memory. Nowadays, computers don't
before the floppy disk, there was the, 7.5-inch disc, something like that. The massive ones that were like the size of your head.
Even have an option for these floppy disks. But if you still have some of these, then don't throw them out. They can make pretty good coasters for that.
1.44 megabytes on that disk. So that's a text message, is it? As long as it's a short text message and doesn't have too many smiley emojis on it.
You know what would be a far more entertaining version of American Ninja Warrior? Watching a bunch of kids today compete in a death match where they had to find a book in a library using the Dewey Decimal System. In the end, everyone gets paper cuts and nobody finds their book.
Why is he trying to say that Americans don't use libraries anymore? Yeah, I would think that libraries are a lot less popular than what they used to be. But in schools, universities, colleges, you would still be expected to source information from a library. And some tasks will be set out to make you specifically get the books from the library. In universities, a lot of the time the reading list is based on books that the doctor or professor or whoever's teaching happens to think are better or has a vested interest in trying to promote in some way. And so they want you to actually buy the actual copy. But most people probably can't afford to buy the copy because they're poor students. So the university library will always stock plenty of copies. Plenty of books you can't get an electronic version of, and even when you can, if you're trying to make notes about stuff, trying to make notes from an electronic document is a lot more difficult than doing it from an actual physical book. As for kids, I think that a lot of kids are reading stories from Kindle and stuff like that, but I think that there's a lot of parents also trying their best to encourage kids to read actual physical books, and a lot of the way that you obtain books is through libraries. Obviously you can just buy them, but a lot of people still use libraries, and also for the social aspect of it as well, especially for the kids. I'm not sure that libraries are obsolete. Maybe in America, maybe you just find the easy way out for trying to find the information, which I think that most people probably would do, but there are some things in place in the UK to try and make sure that people have to go via a library for some information. But in the US, I don't know, maybe not.
Beepers and pagers were once a cool thing to have, but in today's time, not even the drug dealers want to use.
Yeah, beepers and pagers, I don't think they really took off too much in the UK, did they? I know there's a big thing in America, and you see the 2000 era sort of sitcoms and stuff. Everybody's got a beeper or a pager. But I think that the only ones that use them now are doctors. I can't think of anybody in the UK that would have readily had a pager. It was pretty much an American thing, I think.
Use one of these obsolete products. Calculators really are tiny computers, but their only job was to do...
Come on, is he going to now try to tell us that calculators are obsolete? Come on, where's this bloke been?
Do math. They couldn't do anything else besides add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Oh, sure,
a calculator can do a lot more than that, but either way, it's a calculator. Yeah, I guess if you're talking about just everyday use, people aren't going to use a calculator, you're going to use a mobile phone. But if you're a company or anywhere where you'd actually be using calculations on a regular basis, where you wasn't going to just trust your brain to work it out, then you would have a standard calculator, because you wouldn't use your phone for doing that much work on. In fact, you probably wouldn't want to use your phone for work stuff anyway. I don't know what else he's going to say, but I don't believe this one. I think he's just been living in a cave.
Using swear words. 8008 kind of looked like
But
boot.
yeah, that's more obsolete.
Type in 7734 and then turn it upside down and it kind of looked like hell. But these devices couldn't do anything else, and nobody cares about carrying around a physical.
These devices, like as if it's something from, I don't know, what cavemen used to try and smash open eggs with or something like that. It's a calculator. It's still used on a daily basis by millions of people. Or at least in the UK it is. If you have a job where you need to add things up quite often, or at least enough so that you don't want to be messing around with your phone all the time, I'm sure you have a calculator. And most households will probably have a calculator somewhere along the line. Even if it's one of them little mini ones with a little flip over flap type thing and a little solar powered strip on the top that you got 20 years ago from who knows where, but you still got bobbing around in a drawer somewhere. I don't believe this one. I don't believe that calculators are obsolete, and I don't think that they ever will be, because they're too good at what they do. And we always need to add things up and do sums.
Calculator. Our cell phones have a calculator and so much more. Remember the crazy ads that you would see in the back of magazines or free city weeklies? They could have anything from windows to food. Today, these types of ads are found on smartphones and more specifically in apps and search engines that we use.
Yeah, I think that the whole advertising thing's definitely changed over the past 10, 20 years. Physical newspapers, I'm sure that some people do still have them, and you see them in supermarkets and places like that. So people do still buy them, but I think that more people read stuff online or not at all. I don't remember the last time I looked in an actual newspaper to read something, other than when I was having to wait somewhere and there's nothing else to do and there happened to be a newspaper provided on the waiting area desk or something like that. And I don't remember the last time even that happened. So the adverts around them, plus not only that, who would stick their expensive advert in the back of a newspaper that's probably not going to get read by anybody, when you could spend that same money in putting an advert on somewhere like, well, YouTube? You're just going to go where the people are, aren't you?
In the old days, you had to make an effort to get the information you wanted from a subscription to a magazine or newspaper.
Yeah, I think subscription magazines, they're still probably just as popular because they're always niche markets for their own group, aren't they? Whether it's a women's magazine, a train collector's guide, or lockpicking guide, or, I don't know, computer font guide, whatever it is, those groups still exist. And I would think that the magazines, I'm not sure that they would go for just electronic versions of their magazines, because like I say, looking through a physical magazine versus an online document, they're a completely different experience. You know, if you want to look through Vogue, scrolling through a computer screen, you do that for 10 minutes while you're at work because you're trying to sky for a bit. But if you was actually properly wanting to look through it, you'd want the actual physical magazine. So I don't know, I think they're probably a lot less because there's more selection and more choice. But I don't think that they're obsolete. The title of this video is Things That Have Become Obsolete Since the Year 2000. And so far, I'm not agreeing with very many of them.
The information highway was a lot slower. The newspaper reported on happenings that had already been discussed in the previous day's newscast, and magazines were much slower. Today,
well, I don't know. I think the newspapers were incredibly quick. You know, something could happen and they would have it in print within 5 or 6 hours. Within 10 hours, they'll have it on somebody's kitchen table being read. I think that the speed that they would get big stories to the customer, I think that they was doing incredible speed. Well, in the UK at least. I don't know about in the US or any other country around the world, but the UK, I think that they were obviously not internet fast, but what had to be done between something happening and somebody sitting down and reading that story, everything in between, I think that they was doing pretty incredible things. But they're never going to be as fast as the internet, and I'm glad that we've got the internet versus snail mail and the old way of doing things.
Today we expect our news to get delivered instantly via the phone or online. This has put a strain on many newspapers and magazines. You can certainly still see some of these in stores, but you hardly ever see anyone buying them.
I don't think that's true because, like I say, you see the newspapers and magazines at supermarkets, usually somewhere near the entrance, which is what that picture looks like actually. Looks like it's a stand at the front of a supermarket. and you always see at least one or two people around it. Maybe they're just reading the front page stories, but I'm sure the people do buy them. Otherwise they wouldn't bother printing them. There must be a lot of money in it still.
Whether we realize it or not, our lives have changed. Some of the things we used to do are no longer done. Can you think of any others that we missed? Let us know in the comments below.
I'm not sure that I agree with almost anything on the list, actually. I'm not trying to just be awkward. I just don't think that they are obsolete. Fax machines, yeah, not used very often. Tape cassettes, yeah, you're not going to see them. They're obsolete. And CD, mini disc players and things like that, they're not used anymore. But CDs, people still play CDs. Just because you can play it on your phone doesn't mean to say that that's going to be your entire collection of music. Telephones, landlines, again, yeah, they're still used. In the UK, they're still used. People don't make that many calls from the landlines because a lot of people get free calls from their mobile packages. But there's a lot of people that also don't, whereas you can get free local calls on your landline. So a lot of people still utilise that, or evenings or weekends free calls, things like that. Plus also the company side of it that I said. But overall, I think that most of the things on this list, including things like the computer suites and stuff, we didn't have dedicated computer suites that school kids can go into to access the internet and stuff. We just have computers accessible within the library area. That way you sign into the library, you sign onto a computer, and there's an easier way to keep track of who was going where and doing what. If somebody's looking at something that they shouldn't be, then they're going to know who's doing it. But yeah, generally I don't think that these things are obsolete. If you disagree, or if you think that I'm right, or if you've got something that you would like to add to the list that they haven't mentioned, which I can think of quite a few things which are a lot more obsolete now than what they were from the year 2000. But he hasn't really mentioned any of them ones. He's gone for ones which, well, I don't think really are obsolete. But I want to know what you think. Add to the comment section what you think, and we'll see you next time.